Don't you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love? Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be a heartbreaker. You're such a love taker. So just suck me in and you can toss me like a cigarette. 'Cause I just wanna be a bad habit, yeah.
Welcome to Inside the Numbers with the People's Pundit. And now here's your host, Rich Barris.
Free Will and Friday. Welcome to Inside the Numbers, folks. I'm your host, Rich Barris. We're going to talk about Biden again, falling again. Look, sandbag or no sandbag. I don't mean to laugh because it's an embarrassing day for the country, but it gets a little bit ridiculous after a while. I mean, to my count, this is number 4. All right. Also, we're going to talk about the Sunshine State Battleground Poll. It's back. And we'll have our buddy, quite frankly, on to discuss it. But it's Q&A Friday, so get your Q&As in. Let's just go right to it. First, we'll leave the falling stuff for Frank, I think, right? We'll leave some of that. There is a sandbag, so I'm being a bit of a wise guy. I saw it. I do see it. I'll show you photos of it. But is that the point? Like, how the hell do you not see a sandbag? I don't know. What the hell is going on in Florida? This isn't really much of a race anymore. I'm not just talking about the primary. I'm even talking about the general election. Both Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis would easily beat Joe Biden in the state of Florida. But he's very, very unpopular at this point. But there is no doubt there are different coalitions. Ron DeSantis would do a little bit better than white people. Donald Trump would do a lot better with Hispanics. So despite the fact that Ron DeSantis did, in fact, carry Hispanics in the gubernatorial election, as I have told you a million times, when it comes to presidential races, gubernatorial elections have absolutely zero predictive value. And they are not going to tell you how, when the partisan voting index is much more strict, much more rigid, they're not going to tell you how that same candidate might do in a presidential election. But Joe Biden has gotten very unpopular in the state of Florida. He didn't win it. He lost it by a fairly historic margin for a presidential race, the biggest margin since George W. Bush. And Florida was a lot whiter back then. So let's just get into it and let's look at what's fueling Donald Trump's lead. And he does have a lead in the state of Florida over Ron DeSantis. All right, so here we go. Let's pick it up. Right now, as of me mapping this is 1,177 interviews. We are beyond that now because we are still running, but nothing much is changing at all. And we'll go through some of the key demographic groups, but this is by region, obviously, by geography. All right, and you can see what this is right here is not a margin. All right, so that is an iteration. How many actual interviews did we conduct in a specific area? That tells you how many interviews did we conduct that presidential candidate was chosen. Donald Trump is in red. Ron DeSantis is in a shade of blue, as you can see from the legend right beneath it. Mike Pence is in yellow. Nikki Haley is in a darker blue. Tim Scott's in like a coral green. What do you call that, Laura? Aqua green. Vivek is in a goldish kind of shade. Chris Christie is a light orange. Asa Hutchinson is also deep red, but I'll show you as of right now, Asa Hutchinson doesn't have a single vote. She's laughing, but not a single one. Doug Burgum doesn't have a single vote. None. Oh, before we even get started here, I really want the live polling thing we did on Wednesday night was pretty cool, but it consisted of me just updating it constantly and showing you what it is. Data Wrapper has a robust API, and I'd very much like to put the call out that if anybody thinks that they can hook up, and I'll just tell you right now, whether the interviews are done online, they're done through SMS, or they're done live SMS on the phone, whatever it may be, all agents put it into Alchemar, which also has a robust API. So if you feel that you have the skill set to do that, then we want to talk to you. And then later we can use the weights that we always do in Market Site and I can show you, what the weighted result is. What I'm going to show you right now in the back end of Alkmaar is just percentages. Look, Ron DeSantis did pick it up a little bit. I don't even know if that's really true. Where did we end up on Wednesday night? 50-35? I think it was something like that. I want to say ballpark. It's not that he even picked it up. It's just that you'll see it filled out more. I mean, the more, look, that's statistics. The more interviews you conduct, the more crazy, actually Asa Hutchinson does in fact have 0.9%, but I guess the iterations are so, well, we're actually using tolerance. And I want to give you the for those who know, and I'll explain this to everybody, but for those who know what I'm talking about, tolerance is 0.05, iterations are 6. And what does that mean? So if there were, like, for instance, +4 here, okay, that's not a margin. That's how many of this individual plotted space that you see on the graphs, how many of them would you see if it was just only dots? And I did do it, but it was a cluster, you know what? So I decided to give you these iterations, and I'll tell you what is live here because I know you can't see some stuff. Then we'll go down to Miami and we'll look at it. Actually, if I zoom, I think you can see it better. Now it removes the iteration. Okay. So I'll just have to give it to you. All right. So I don't know why it's showing you that instead of what I can see on the back end, but you know what? Maybe I will show you what I see this way. Hold on. Bear with me 1 second. This way you can actually see the numbers. All right. Some of them are being covered right now. Not everyone's an expert in geography, so I wanted to really show the numbers. All right. So I'll add it to the stream. All right. So, and I know it's a little bit hard for you guys to see, but it's Miami is, if I get rid of the map symbols, you'll be able to see it a lot better. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Sorry, I'm learning this just like everybody else. That's outlines. Nope. Then it's going to be in annotations. Yes, it is. So we're not going to show labels. Not everybody is an expert in geography, so I really wanted to show labels. Obviously, this is for the Fort Lauderdale area. This is Miami. And listen, a big part of Trump's lead is from, I want to say 2, but it's really 3 areas: the Gold Coast, the Eastern Coast, the Space Coast, and Tampa. The Tampa area. All right. So if we remove the labels, you can see, obviously, DeSantis has some support in Tampa, a lot of support, but it's just not as much as Trump is getting. In South Florida, when I give you the margin with Hispanics, you will see what is driving that margin in South Florida. Most Hispanic population that is going to participate in the Republican primary is going to come from here. As you can see, it's like, a little bit there. Nikki Haley gets, if you scroll around, you'll see it. Right. And if I actually remove the annotate, if I do that, I'm going to have to reset all the values. So I'm not going to do that. But if I did show you each individual interview, then you would see it. All right. So also, if you put the labels back, you can see that north of Orlando, DeSantis does very well. But in the Orlando area, Kissimmee, Trump is very dominant here. DeSantis also does very well in the Daytona area, but Trump is no slouch there. But you can see that DeSantis has some more support. But then as you go around to the Palm Coast, you go a little bit north, you get to Flagler, right? For those who know Florida, you know what I'm talking about. St. Augustine area, then DeSantis does better. If we add the labels back, you'll see DeSantis does better in his capital area, in the Tallahassee area. He has more support, obviously. That I would expect that. But then it's oddly, when you get into Duval, Trump gets to be more dominant. Duval with Jacksonville, and then in Panama City. The Panhandle, when you look at just the Panhandle region, it actually looks pretty close, which is not what we found in the first poll that we did last month, but it is what Florida Atlantic University found, which was released about 4 days or 5 days after we conducted our poll. We had, I think it was Trump plus 13 or something like that. I'd have to go back and look in the overall arching ballot, with the crowded ballot, let's call it. It was a much bigger lead. I think it was plus 17 when we did the 2-way. Then 4 days later, Florida Atlantic University comes out and shows in a 2-way, it's actually plus 30. And I was wondering if it just needed a little bit of time. We're going to dovetail this all into what is the bump, what is not the bump. Listen, when we looked at eligible only, Florida is, of course, a close primary. When we looked at eligible only and likely primary voters, Trump support is much higher. It is than what we see in the overall. DeSantis does better with moderates and with independents who say they're moderate, but they would have to, of course, declare in order to vote in the primary. DeSantis has an opportunity to make up some ground if he does that. However, it's still not enough because, as you will see, Trump is at the magic number. So at this point, it goes back to, once again, DeSantis really does need to change minds. Look, in the state of Florida, not that I ever advocate for giving up any voter, any kind of voter, but the fact of the matter is, I would much rather be doing decently among white Republicans, and decently, even obviously outperforming DeSantis, because he is. And I would rather have it closer with white voters, but then crushing my opponent literally 2.5, 3 to 1 now among Hispanics. It was 2 to 1 in the poll last month. Remember, it's now 3 to 1. So driven by Mexican, Cuban, and Puerto Rican ethnicities. Puerto Ricans, I actually thought might be the one that Ron DeSantis could hold on to a little bit because he's the governor there and maybe he had some kind of an appeal to them. But the fact of the matter is he's getting trounced. All right. So I'm going to go back to this map in a second, but I just want to, again, there's a lot of votes here. This is Hillsborough. So when you're doing better in this, the Tampa Bay area among Puerto Ricans, that's going to translate into Hillsborough. And then in the West, the most America First region of, it's really two, the most America First region of Florida, because we asked Republicans whether or not they identified more with America First Republicanism or traditional Republicanism. It's not the Panhandle, which you would have thought maybe we just, once we collect more interviews, that will change. But it's not. It's Miami and it's the Tampa area, which to me, I was a little bit stunned about, but that's what we found. And then, of course, the East. You could just see it here on the Eastern Shore. The exit polls are a little bit different. I will give you how we will lay out regions, and let me actually give you the regional definitions. All right, before this way, we're all on the same page. I hate these flies. I love the weather. I hate the flies. Oh my God. It's always just one. It's not flies. It's like one fly buzzing around me. That just drives me nuts. All right. And of course, some guy's going to make a wise ass crack about that. And that's funny, but it's a good thing. It's a good thing you're a keyboard cowboy, you know? Anyway, the Panhandle, Escambia, Okaloosa, Santa Rosa, Walton, Bay, Calhoun. And by the way, Bay is one of the bigger counties. And as you could see, and can you see? Am I showing it to you right now? Yes. As you can see, that's where Trump is the strongest in the Panhandle, is actually in and around Bay, where there is some of the biggest population. One of the bigger population counties in the Panhandle is Bay County. Republicans win it. It's a net 40% usually, depending who the candidate is. It's a huge deal. Anyway, Bay, Calhoun, Franklin, Gadsden, Gulf, Holmes, Jackson, Jefferson, Leon, Liberal, Liberty, Madison, Taylor, Wakulla, Washington, and then the North Central Florida area is Alachua, my old stomping ground, Gator Nation for life, baby. Bradford, Citrus, Columbia, Dixie, Gilchrist, Hamilton, Hernando, Lafayette, Lake, Levi, Marion, Putnam, Sumter, Sewanee, Union, Baker, Clay, Duval, Flagler, Nassau, St. John's, Volusia, Orlando, Atlantic Coast, which is right now Trump country. Brevard, Orange, Osceola, Seminole, Indian River, Martin, Okeechobee, Palm Beach, and St. Lucie. Tampa Bay area also at this current moment is Trump country. Pasco, Pinellas, Hillsborough. The Southeast Gold Coast, Trump country. Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. Southwest Gulf, mid-Florida. This is where DeSantis is a little bit better here, and there's a lot of Republican votes. Charlotte, Collier, DeSoto, Glades, Hendry, Lee, Sarasota, Monroe, Hardy, Highlands, Manatee, and Polk. All right, so just to give you guys an idea of what our regions are. Why do we do it like that? We've been doing it like this for many years. It's just a more specific regional definition than what you'll see in exit polls, which is generally what you'll see. I mean, it's very close to what they name them. And you'll be able to decipher it. Even if there's a slight name change, you'll be able to decipher, oh, that's that one. That's that one. So it'll give you a little bit of an idea how many votes are in these areas. So for instance, and I got to do 2020 because 2020 is actually, I don't believe Edison gave regional definitions for 2022. If they did, then media outlets just didn't put it up, and I'm not paying $40,000 to know. So the Panhandle, North Florida, it's about 16% right now overall sample. It was 18% of the 2020 presidential vote. The Orlando Central Atlantic region, which again we call the Orlando Atlantic Coast. All right. That is 19% in 2020, was so about 1 in 5. The Tampa Bay area, which we call the Tampa Bay area, was 16%. The Gulf Coast and mid-Florida, we call it this the Southwest Gulf mid-Florida because that's their definition. It's 20%. And then Miami and the Gold Coast, which we call the Southeast Gold Coast, which is Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. That area alone in 2020 was 27% of the vote. Huge percent of the vote. So looking how Trump is just romping it down here, then you can understand. And if I zoom, I'll give you some understanding of how dominant he is here. Okay. It's just dominant. It's total dominance. So DeSantis has support, but he's getting crushed. All right. So there's a lot of votes. So you can, if you're Trump, you can do a little bit worse with some of these other areas as long as you're going to add several 100,000 votes to your overall margin. Let's get rid of the labels so you guys can see. Very, 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 very dominant. And again, also dominant in the East Coast, right? And why may that be? State to state migration, big part of that. Also, a big part of that is Trump's tenure as president, certainly economic wise, helped this area. And then, of course, especially over here. And then, of course, the policies that Trump implemented as president, just some policies you can't do as governor, guys, right? So if you are a Venezuelan, if you're Cuban, which Trump is doing very well, obviously, with those two groups, if you're them, it really comes down to, I may love my governor, but do I want to take a chance? And, unfortunately for Team DeSantis, that's what the answer to that is no. All right. At this point, Cubans have really grown as a share of the vote, especially even in a Republican primary. They're more of the Hispanic vote in a Republican primary than Puerto Ricans are. Right? Even Mexicans now, over the years in Florida since, publicly, 2014 was the first public poll ever we put out for Florida. And we had Rick Scott. Everybody else was losing. Had Rick Scott losing. We had Rick Scott up, but we even estimated the number of votes that he would win by. We said roughly 70,000 votes. Nailed it. The difference between them and now with who makes up what share of the population, voting population, when it comes to Hispanics has changed dramatically, especially in a Republican primary, because the increase in the vote share of that Hispanics are in a Republican primary has significantly risen, right? So there's just more now than there was. So Cubans, Venezuelans came out of nowhere. They're now a nice little chunk, even in a Republican primary. And Cubans are a large share in a Republican primary. So, and it's also a matter of who's eligible to. And as I told you guys all those years, this was not like, Cuban independence, these voters had changed their minds so much that they now, that they went, and it takes a lot of motivation to change your registration, and you have to be eligible to even vote in that primary. So let's just give you a real quick where the overall percentages are right now. And of course, you won't be shocked that it's pretty damn educated for the state of Florida. Too educated. in fact. So when we do these weights, it will help Trump a little. It's not a little, it's going to. And I'll show you, because I'll show you, let's look at education, for instance, right? So overall, you can see Trump here, it's dominant. He's at 50%. It will be more because the share of the conservative vote is a lot higher. Let's look at education, for instance. Let's start with just a high school degree, okay? And I don't want to share too much because I got to drip some of this out, right? So look at the margin Trump has with high school or less voters. Oh, no, excuse me. That's just high school or GED equivalent, 59.4 to 22. And their share right now is, we wanted, after Wednesday night, I wanted to oversample as many groups as possible because it's weird what's going on. I didn't believe it. I'm like, how is Trump winning post-grads? Which I'll show you in a second. Winning post-grads, but DeSantis slightly carries 4-year degrees. Like, I don't understand what the hell is going on here. So I wanted to oversample it and to see if that maintained, and it did maintain. So at the end of the day, you got to wonder, like, where's the rest of this guy's lane? All right, so Voc schools, stuff like that, not many. It's always like 2%, something like that. But Trump is still carrying them 64 to 27. No statistical significance for anybody else, about 9% undecided. When we add them together with high schools or less, Trump is carrying them 60 to 22. Now watch this. Oh, actually, some college associate degree, big chunk of the vote in Republican primary in Florida. Oops, don't look. Oh, that's what I say, don't look. All right, so 52-33. So after a while, you got to wonder, where's that lane if some college associates are even above 50, right? Where's the lane for DeSantis? Undecided, by the way, is shrunken among these groups, folks, that either have a 2-year degree, like an associate, or some still in there trying to get it, have a high school degree, a GED, vocational training, right? Stuff like the undecided share is almost nothing now. It's almost nothing. It's 3% with the 2-year degree. When you get into educated voters, it does get a little bit more. And here's where DeSantis is strong. All right, so you can see DeSantis carrying them. You can see DeSantis carrying 4-year college degrees, 43 to 39. It's not a lot, right? The unsure, undecided is also getting less now. So as we'll see in the two-way, if you bump out all these other people, the problem for DeSantis is, even among those who have a 2-year degree, Mike Pence's voters, strangely enough, go to Donald Trump. Vivek's voters go to Donald Trump. These voters are like, it's almost nothing. DeSantis gets most of Nikki Haley's, but not all of them. Not like Trump takes like all of Vivek's voters and all of Pence's voters. So while DeSantis is leading, this would end up in the range of like 50-50. It would be really close. So he's got a 4-point lead. Let's give it to him. Let's say when all's said and done and everyone decides, it's still a 4-point lead. I actually don't think it would be. I think it would be more like a 2-point lead. And then among post-grads, this maintained 46 to 35. Trump leads with 11 points among people who have a postgraduate degree. And again, look at the undecided vote. I just don't know where the opportunity here is, folks. Anyone else, any other race, if it was anybody not named Donald Trump. Oh, I forgot to show you. Hold on 1 second. Anyone not named Donald Trump, everyone would be saying this race is over. Move on. If you're opposing Trump, you're just being a spoiler. Okay? Last time Trump led with Hispanics, 56-33. I'm about to show you Hispanics now. Lot of decision among Hispanics. It has happened. Like a lot of people have decided. Here it is. This is among Hispanic Republican primary voters in the state of Florida, 62-24. So when weighted for age, race, gender, region, and education, how do you think this is going to play out? Trump is already above last month when he led DeSantis by, I got to go back and check, but I want to say it was like 13 among the overall race, the crowded field. He's already above that now before waiting. Last time, and this always happens, waiting always, changes the numbers a little bit. It benefited him a few points. So, I just don't see it. Nobody sees it. Can we get real for a second? Let's play. Let's. I don't want to insult your intelligence. Anything is possible in politics, but I don't see this. I just don't. Unsure, undecided, 2 points. 2 points. Could you imagine if Mitt Romney had a lead this big over Rick Santorum? Not just in Florida, but everywhere we've been talking about this. Could you imagine if Mitt Romney had a lead this big over Rick Santorum or Newt Gingrich? Rick Santorum won the Iowa caucuses. Newt Gingrich won the South Carolina Republican primary. And Fox still called them spoilers and said they were just weakening the party and prolonging the inevitable nomination of Mitt Romney, who never had this kind of strength. Again, once I tell you, I have to point out because the candidate right now who's winning, his name is Donald Trump. So apparently all my colleagues have somehow fallen and gotten amnesia. They felt like Joe Biden or something. And now they have amnesia. And they've forgotten everything they learned in college about statistics. When a candidate is repeatedly above 50%, even at 50% and above now, then there is almost no way to defeat that candidate. It's not like one poll. And by the way, if I keep hearing these people say, only in Trump-funded polls, Donald Trump, if that's a wise-ass crack to me, Donald Trump does not fund my polls. You fund them. And Laura and I fund them. Because the truth is, as you all know, crowdfunding does not cover everything. So Laura and I just put our own money into it. So I'm not going to get in the mud. I'm just going to say that if I keep hearing this crap, you better cross the street if I ever see you in public. Cross the street. Cross that mother, because I'm telling you, Rich will get old school on you. All right. Listen, the bottom line is, as far as I know, Donald Trump funds one poll. That's John McLaughlin. And actually, he's even more bearish on Trump in some of these numbers than we are. Losing your own state is a career ender. Getting crushed in your own state is an embarrassment that keeps you in your mansion for two months without showing your face. You lose your own state, your career is over. Ask Marco Rubio, who had many of the same consultants, by the way, surrounding him, seriously telling him that he was nipping on Donald Trump's heels leading up to the Republican primary. He was, quote, surging, and that he should not get out of the race because he may really have a chance to win that state. It is now the consensus. Now the consensus, not my opinion. Now let's take a word from our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to have our buddy Frank join in on the fun. Let's see what Frank has to say about all this. Frank from Quite Frankly. Yep, that Frank. We'll also see what he has to say about Biden. Wait till you guys see the general election numbers in the state of Florida. This puppy is not competitive anymore. Florida is my favorite state to poll. I have to say, it's a little bit of bias in me because it's mine, right? So it's my favorite state to poll, and I'm kind of missing the days when it was a razor's edge, because that's why I used to like it. And I used to come out looking like a rose, smelling like a rose all the time, because everybody got it wrong. And we did not, right? But they were always so close. It's not looking very close. And it doesn't particularly matter if Trump, or it's either Trump or DeSantis. It's just that in a general election, Trump does so much better with non-white voters. When I say so much better, I'm saying like DeSantis looks like Trump did in 2020. They'll probably be trailing just a little bit, but it looks really close. And Trump is carrying them, and is carrying them pretty significantly. All right. So even though DeSantis carried Miami-Dade in his gubernatorial rematch, I do not believe he could carry Miami-Dade in a presidential election. It'd be very, very, very close. But it shouldn't be. Really, it shouldn't be. So there we go. All right. So Laura's telling me to shut up. All right. Listen, folks, authorities fear that extremists are targeting the U.S. power grid, and that's according to Time Magazine, not Breitbart or the People's Pundit. If just 9 key substations were to go down, it would knock out power across the country for up to 18 months. My friends in Florida know what I'm talking about. Your life is frozen in time the moment the power goes out, and that's why you need a solar generator. The new Patriot Power Generator 2000X is portable, but it's powerful enough for your phones, even medical devices, even your refrigerator. Right now, you can go to 4patriots.com. That's 4patriots.com and get one for 10% off if you use the code TPP10 at checkout. That code's for your first purchase only, of course. But again, 4patriots.com. Use the promo code TPP10 to get your Patriot Power Generator today. And it is for your first purchase on anything. But the fact of the matter is, if you're going to use it, folks, you might as well use it for something big, right? Might as well use it for something that you're going to save quite a few ducats on. All right. So, you know what, Laura? Let's do one more real quick. Let's do one more. All right. One more. And before we do go to our buddy, quite frankly, I just want to tell you about this great deal from our friends at Jam and Bean. If you sign up for a new subscription, whether it's for K-Pods, ground coffee, roasted coffee, if you sign up for a new subscription at our friends at Jam and Bean, we'll give you 40% off right off the bat of that new subscription, and you will still get 10% off every month on your renewal if you use the promo code TPP40. That's TPP40 at jamandbean.com. Jamn as the letter like Nancy, bean.com. Again, use the promo code TPP40, and that'll get you 40% off the initial subscription cost, and you will still get 10% off every month on your renewals, subsequent renewals. Use the promo code TPP40. And of course, send Laura and I your feedback on how you love all their great products, which I know you will. All right. So while we wait for Frank to step back in the booth, here he is. He's going to be a little bit delayed, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm going to play a video for him real quick. But first and foremost, Frank, my buddy, man, thanks for joining for the first time Inside the Numbers. How you doing today?
I'm great. You know, I got here just in time to hear you threaten somebody.
Cross the street.
I'm going old school. Is it all?
Frank, you know where I come from now.
Oh, yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
It's like the world would be a better place if you were forced to suffer the consequences. That's all I'm gonna say.
I know, and that applies to so many things now. It really does.
Yeah, it really does. It really does, Frank. Which
I got the loop-de-loop straw for my.
I love the loop-de-loop straw. I miss the old loop-de-loop straws. Funny thing, he's gone now, so it's not like some authority can go after him. One of my favorite pictures of me when I was a kid, my godfather, on 9W, headed upstate, right, in New York. On 9W at this hotel, and it was awesome. It was like built into the side of a mountain near Bear Mountain, and close to Bear Mountain, but right on 9W. And it was built into it, Frank, where we could actually see the fireworks off the river every year. The back end of the hotel, the front was in the front face of the mountain. The back end was on the other side of it. And he had a pool back there literally in a big basement carved out. He had a wine cellar where they made their own because they had vineyards. It was crazy. This is New York. you know. And one of my favorite pictures of me when I was a kid was this giant loop-de-loop straw, okay? And he's like, Richard, stomp on the grapes, right? And then for little Rich, I'd like disappear. Frank would be like, the hell is this kid? And he'd find me with the loop-de-loop straw.
You had a grape stomp? You actually got to stomp grapes?
Oh, yeah. It was awesome. It was amazing. Yeah, he was as Italian as it got, you know, and I would always like, you know, Nana would be out there like, you know, plucking zucchini flowers, which I don't know if you guys know this, but you could fry a zucchini flower and it's delicious. There's different ways to eat them, but she used to make them for me all the time. And I don't think anything from a salad and back then, Frank, was bought from a store. Like everything that I had in the garden, right? Anyway, they would always say, hey, go get me the zucchini or go stomp a grape or something. And they would find me with the straw in the barrel.
It was, I mean, the zucchini, I mean, zucchini flowers around here. I mean, sometimes
so good.
It can get a little bit, I don't know. People will steal zucchini flowers just because of that. And
it's a delicacy, man. I'm telling you.
You can bread them and fry them, but as nothing the waste. I still, you know, my brother and I, we were raised by that last gasp of the World War II generation, all of the Depression generation. So I still remember being sent into the driveways, and every time I see him now, I still want to grab him, but there's just too much weed spray has been sprayed over the years to want to actually eat it. But dandelions, we would go and grab. They say go and grab the dandelions, not the actual stalk and the flower, but the dandelion leaves, because that was it's nutritious. And it's also a ready-made salad. We would have dandelion salad with the oil and the vinegar, and it's a little bitter, but man, oh man, I mean, you're talking about Depression thinking. We were eating things that were growing in the driveway.
Taking me back, brother. Taking me back. I mean, the dandelions were a staple in my family. Again, and it was like, you know, like you're right though. I still see them, and I'm like, oh, I'm telling it, eat a dandelion. But you can't now. I mean, everywhere is people are spraying stuff all over the place. You just can't do it, Frank.
Yep.
You know, but where they are still, or were, because after a while they sold that place and moved to Florida like everybody else. But, you know, when they got older and they just couldn't, it was a lot of work. The place was a lot of work. But yeah, you know, back then this was just great wide open, you know, and you could do it. And it was great. And it's served in wooden bowls, like you said, a little balsamic or something, served in wooden bowls. It was great.
Yeah, we had those.
It was great. Everybody's like, yeah, we know they're Italian. That's the way it was. And that's the way it still should be, frankly. I mean, I'll be honest, man. I mean, we're just talking about consequences. We're now all living with the consequences of the media lying to this country about how unstable this man really was. So I have to play this clip again. I'll be fair and show the sandbag, but let's just play the clip. And then I got to get your take on this, Frank. It's like, who cares if there was or was not a sandbag? The president can't see where the hell he's walking. Let me just roll it.
Okay. I know. I watched. Did he break it? Somebody told me that he broke his hip.
The White House is saying he's fine, but he's old and brittle, so I wouldn't be surprised. I heard he was hurt too, but then the White House is saying he's fine, unless they change their story. I actually have the AP article up here, but you know what? It basically says he quipped, "I got sandbagged." With a smile on his face. Listen to how they report this. I got sandbagged, the president quipped with a smile when he arrived back at the White House on Thursday evening before pretending to jog into the residence. At least they're saying pretending to jog. I mean, this is why would you put on a show if you're not hurt, Frank?
Hey, I remember in summer of 2020 when he was pretending to campaign, and that was whole thing there too. He's pretending to campaign, and the media that is doing all this really nauseating fluff kind of the circling the wagons thing. they were really campaigning on his behalf through whatever kind of media they can cobble together to make it look like he was an active, engaged man who actually had people who cared about what he had to say.
Yeah.
I remember Brian Stelter doing a segment on how strong he looked when he was riding his bike. Like he looks vigorous, and I mean, obviously this is 2 years before he fell off his bike as well. But during the campaign in 2020, I remember them doing things like that all the time. That you just had your head in your hands, and they're going on about how strong he was pedaling. And I don't know. I look at something like that, and my first instinct is not to laugh. Obviously, I just kind of shake my head, and I wait for the ridiculous. The media war that ensues afterwards, because I mean, how many angles do you want to attack this at? The guy is just frail, and being physically frail is one thing. The fact that you have the physical frailty with the mental issues, it's just, I don't know. It's a reminder of what we're all living with. It's not just, hey, you voted for this, because I don't really believe that voting put him in office.
Well, Frank, you even use the word, because it's always the same. It's the same thing they trot out. That they got a statement. The AP got a statement from his doctor, which they're calling the White House doctor. Like, that's not. It's not the White House doctor. It's Joe Biden's doctor. What do you? They act like it's some kind of independent position or something. It's Joe Biden's doctor, and he said, I've checked him out, and he is a vigorous, strong 80-year-old man. That's the statement. You have got to be kidding me. Just how could you be a professional and give a statement like that? At least with FDR, they were lying to us for the good of like the country, which I still don't like. But the fact is, we're in wartime, and I kind of can at least see that. Although I don't like being lied to, I don't like the public being lied to. But FDR's mind wasn't gone. FDR it was from polio. He had a physical disability, but it didn't prevent him from doing his duties. And that's actually, I have another one I want to play for you really quick. And I kind of want you to, you got to mock these people reacting on Fox. Okay. But yeah, watch this.
You share what Fox News has found and what ABC says right now. Number 4, guys, has mental soundness to serve effectively, yes or no? 60% say no. That's our poll. ABC, Washington Post, you think Biden's in good enough physical health to serve effectively? 62% say no. Guy, my feeling yesterday was it was a tough moment because the world's a better place when America's a strong country. And when the commander-in-chief has a moment like that for all the public to see, it does not express strength.
He went down hard, and he's 80. I'm very glad that he seems to be doing okay, and he looked and sounded fine back at the White House. That's something every American should be happy to see. Also, anyone can trip over a sandbag that you don't know is there. True. But not everyone is president, and not everyone is 80. And the numbers that you just put on the screen, I think, point to what Jesse was saying. There's already a large majority of voters who have concerns in this realm. And whether it's completely not his fault at all, and just like a freak accident, and he was, no worse for the wear at the end of it, I think just the image of that spliced together with the other ones that you mentioned, those will only deepen some of the concerns and misgivings that some voters have, even voters who don't hate the president or don't disapprove of his job performance.
I just can't take it anymore. Aren't you sick of these ridiculous responses? It's a stronger world when America. Yeah, shut up, Bill. And the same thing with Guy. I mean, I think every American should be happy. He's all right. What the hell are you talking about? They were cutting off effigies of Donald Trump's head and holding it up. Kathy Griffin had a bloody severed head mocking Donald Trump. I stop pretending the world's like that. And
Amendment every time his mouth went dry and he had to pick up a bottle of Fiji water. 25th Amendment. Anytime he had cotton mouth, they said that we have to get him out of here. He's failing physically. And then you have this. Number one, if you look at this from a civics, a traditional American civic standpoint, the president means all to everybody. That this should not even be a that is in any way, shape, or form important to us. Okay, that's not the way that we were set up. This is not top down. This is not our 4-year king. And then so number one, I don't care who the hell's president, and especially since I started understanding that, I almost felt exercised of having this burden to say this guy on Fox just did right there. The other thing about him is, 60% of people they're pretty concerned. Everybody was concerned. This is nothing like, oh wow, he's really took a dip in the last 2 years. We were seeing this in 2020 when, again, he wasn't campaigning, and even when he made these very scripted appearances on television, and he's reading the liner notes on the teleprompter instead of what he's actually supposed to say. He's reading. He had no control over what he was reading. He's out there making ridiculous statements about the racial statements about you're not black if you don't vote for me. I mean, there was plenty to be concerned about here. To say that because this guy tripped on stage somewhere is really starting to make people wonder whether or not he is able to do the job again at 80 years old is so stupid. I mean, it's everything they say, even if they're presenting themselves as a moderate to right-leaning news source, everything they say covers up these realities that we were living with. Not even long. It wasn't even that long ago. 2020 it seems like it's an eon ago, but it's not. This is the stuff we were saying back then. The guy can't control himself. He can't even read a teleprompter. So, when you see him trip, like I say, it's not like, oh, this is a revelation here.
I think back to Emerald Robinson being the White House correspondent from Newsmax before they fired her because she didn't want to poison her body and because she was reporting on other things. I can't help but to remember this. Like, she would say, I talked to a source in Secret Service. This is going on at the beginning of his administration. And they would the way they reacted to Emerald Robinson simply telling the country the shape this man is in was like a form of outrage. Like, she committed a sin. It was like one of the 7 deadly sins she violated. And now it's like they have no choice but to respond with this ridiculousness because of how they personally handled it. Exactly what you just said. The whole time he was campaigning, the beginning of the administration, they should have been talking about this. They lied to the public for the entire campaign. The guy didn't even know what he was running for. He's in South Carolina. I'm a candidate for U.S. Senate. And the place is just like clapping, like pretending he didn't say it, And it's like, I look at this image and it looks like Hillary Clinton. Do you remember that when they threw her in the back of a van, like a piece of meat, like a slab of meat or a bag of potatoes?
It was Hillary's day at the fish market. They threw her right into the van.
Hillary's day at the fish market. Oh man!
And that was on September 11th. I was like, "Oh, this is bad." September 11th, and you could see right before she went down, she did the head bobbing like a cork thing, and then it was just in you go. And then what? Next day they have her. They say, "Oh, she's suffering from some kind of a walking pneumonia or whatever," and they have her coming out of a building in New York the next day hugging children. You just said she had the flu. What the hell? Like. I don't care. I don't know anymore.
No, Frank. Yeah, because it was walking pneumonia. Then when she was hugging the children, they said she was dehydrated. I mean, it was just ridiculous, as if people and not of course many saw it, but they're talking. Speaking of children, they're talking and handling the American public like they're children, like they are too stupid to understand this. And this is they really put everybody in this situation, where now it's so sad, Bill Hemmer. It's so sad. Well, where were you, Bill Hemmer? Where were you? Like you said, 2 scoops of ice cream. That's where you were, Bill. 2 scoops of ice cream. Donald Trump takes 2 scoops of ice cream. So unserious. And they put us in this position, or at least they helped. And they put us in this position. Now here we are. And I was just talking about Florida before, and I'm looking at how unpopular he is in the state of Florida. And I'm thinking to myself, Well, you're right. He never really was popular in the state of like, this is not a huge change. It's just that I guess there's enough of people now, even polling it in 2020,
What are you talking
Trump
about?
had an edge. Biden, he was never really popular there, so yeah, he's more unpopular now, I guess, because some things just have an impact, but he never really was popular. And it was all this fabricated image that they put on it.
Let me ask you this, Rich. This is something I should have actually brought up with you on the show when you came on a couple of days ago, but no better time than right now, I guess. When I think of Florida, there's discernible. I mean, there's actually very, very easy to track things that were being done in the state to clean up the voter rolls and to make sure that things were on the up and up, not skewed, but cleaned up so that you can actually get a better representation of what people inside the state were expressing with their vote. And some key firings and resignations and things like that. And now suddenly, when things are just a little bit more tidy in Florida, it is no longer even should be considered a battleground state. It is a red state. But in New York, and next week, you let me know if there's anything you want me to ask these people when they come on. But next week in studio, I'm going to have some representatives from Audit NY, and they have been doing analytics of the New York voter rolls. And what they have seen, I'm sure you've seen it, Uncovered DC has covered it, and a few other places too. But what they had said about the New York voter rolls is that it is so outside the bounds of anything that could be explained, and definitely outside the bounds of anything that can be classified as innocent errors, that it is only a problem for New York, but New York as it stands as an entity is a national security risk, they say, because of just how bad the voter rolls over there. That we know, okay, yeah, so goes, however goes New York City, goes the state of New York. I don't really think that needs to be the case. It's such a big state, but it should be a lot more competitive there. And I don't really believe that Kathy Hochul won. I mean, just me. And when I read what they have been analyzing with the hundreds of thousands of people, the millions of discrepancies all over the place, I wonder. I just wonder about what you think, what your polling has and your work on states like New York has done. In balance with what they're finding in our own in-state investigations. What do you think about the future of New York, if there's any kind of way to clean that up?
New York City, or the five boroughs in general, the voter rolls are, we always use the term, they're dirty, right? You have dirty voter rolls. There are people still on there that left the state years ago. There's just, they're not real records. Like there's a bunch of just I don't even know if to call them ghost records, but incomplete information. New York is a complete, show, Frank. I mean, the state in general is, but in a state like New York and in Pennsylvania, really, they have the same issue. It's not just like, let's say, for instance, and I'm using a simple math just to make it easy on people. Let's say New York State is 70, or New York City, the five boroughs, 70% of the statewide vote. It's 85% of the problems with the voter rolls, like there being inconsistencies or just incorrect records on the voter rolls. Anyone who polls anyone who polls a state and uses voter files to source their data, all of us know. I never understood how the media could pretend, since they're always so involved in polling, that what I always claimed wasn't true, which is, if you're a pollster, you pull records off of voter files so you can conduct polling. You're going to get people that the numbers, the records, they're just messed up. New York is one of those where it's just abysmal. It's so bad. And they pretend like that's not the case or something. Like, and not only that, but that if that's the case, then if you're going to do unsolicited or universal, which is why I was glad it was defeated in 21. If you're going to do universal unsolicited vote by mail, you have got to at least acknowledge that if you're sending out records that are incorrect, you're leaving potential ballots to be exploited. There's just, even in Vegas, which I'm not a huge fan of, unless I'm going to visit Robert Barnes. But that state just is another one where Vegas is, or Clark County is 70% of the problem with the voter rolls, but it's of the state vote, but it's 80 something percent, 83% of the overall incorrect records. And they're sending out universal mail-in balloting. They're not going to the same or correct people. And even in Florida, there was, I think I may even still have one here. Hold on, just to show people. I do. So here's Florida. All right. This was a bunch of them sent out, even though this was to an address in Jacksonville. Those were 4 that did not belong to the resident. He got 6 overall, 1 for him, 1 for his wife. The other 4 were for people who had prior addresses to that record.
And he could have easily voted on their behalf and sent it back.
You could have just filled it out, Frank, and sent it back. That's the problem with this. And to pretend like that's not possible, or, it's going to get caught by the signature verification process, is a bit of a joke. It's a joke. So even Florida has some things that they need to do, and they have a long way to go. But, you can't help, and I was showing the map before, you can't help but to notice that, for instance, Trump's vote share in Palm Beach, Trump's vote share in Miami-Dade, Linda was fired. Brenda Snipes in Broward County was fired, right? So Palm. You can't help but to notice that these women are fired or removed, because in Florida, you can do that if you're the governor and you have reason to believe that they're not doing their duties either right, correctly, or faithfully, right? Even if it's just innocent, but they're incompetent, you can get rid of a supervisor of an election. By the way, they're trying to do that in Texas now. I think it did pass, but they're going to, they're basically going to try to, of course, Democrats will try to challenge it in court. But the governor of Texas doesn't have this power. DeSantis used it. He actually, I don't know why Rick Scott didn't. It almost cost him his own Senate seat, when he was running. But he never used that power. When DeSantis got in, he did. And then the very next presidential election, the shares of the Republican vote are not just higher, they're significantly higher. So all of a sudden in Broward County, you go from like 20% of the vote to 35% of the vote. Like, that can't be a coincidence, Frank.
Broward in particular is what I was talking about, referring to when I say certain things going on, resignations, firings, and all of a sudden, boom, it's not a battleground state anymore. It's just really incredible. And New York is what it is. California is what it is, but I just don't believe it's that bad. And when I think about states like Pennsylvania, I look at that as a grooming situation where we are slowly being groomed into thinking that Pennsylvania is just going blue, because the time that they string a couple of really big Democrat victories together in that state, once they string a couple of victories together, it has been normalized as a blue state, then the margins can just get more and more out of control, and people will just believe, well, that's just the trend. And that's why I said to all my friends who are living in Tennessee, I said, you better watch out, because after this shooting, and then what they were trying to do with these fake youth movements about gun control, and the youths in Tennessee are rising up and they want change and all that stuff. I said, they're trying to create predicate that the
pretext. Yep.
The winds of change are coming. It's all psychological. I don't believe that there's plenty of red diaper doper babies out there that will go and vote for a Marxist. But I just believe that whereas the squeaky wheel always gets the grease and they project themselves as the majority, I don't believe that they are as big as they always say that they are.
Well, I got to tell you, Frank, I mean, in 2022, we had done several polls. I did one more for locals in Pennsylvania. We did have Oz down the entire time, but until the very end, with the one we did with locals, we really did think Oz took a little bit of a lead. And we weren't alone, by the way. The USA Today poll, had it going from like Fetterman to a tied race. And I believe Susquehanna had Oz +1. So it's not like we were alone. It just did not materialize, whether that's like, and I do think Republicans have to do a better job, going and chasing ballots. But I mean, Frank, the numbers were there. And if you look at Allegheny, where now the governor used to be the attorney general, saying things like, we're going to find the votes. Now, don't worry, Mr. President. Allegheny is going to find those votes for you, deliver the votes you need. How the hell could you say that if you're in the position of power that you're in? You really have no business making a statement like that. It just adds fuel to the fire. But also, I mean, I'm not naive. You're not naive. Some people clearly are. But when I hear somebody say something like that, then to me, it's in. You know what I mean? Like that's it. Like he would not make a statement like that. Frank, if he didn't know something was in the machine grinding along, to work out the outcome they want. And Pennsylvania, we're going to find out, because even when it was like Fetterman +4, which we did for CD Media, that one, we never had Mastriano as far behind as he was. And I know a lot of people who have polled Pennsylvania well. Jim at Susquehanna, the guys at Rasmussen. Yeah, he was down, and he was down more than Oz, but he wasn't down that much, not that much more. So while I think he clearly lost, a little bit stunned by the margin. But the whole time that he's down, Oz is down, even when we thought Oz pulled just slightly ahead, Trump had a significant lead. So we're going to find out, because I think it's more than likely at this point that Trump is the nominee. And Trump's lead in Pennsylvania, when Oz was down 4 points, Trump was up 7, the biggest lead we ever found for a Republican candidate in that state. So they're going to test that. We're going to test that.
It's Pennsylvania's business over there with Oz, but when I saw that, I was like, that's just bad. I would be
it's a mess, man.
I would hate that as a candidate, and I didn't understand. I've had people try to explain to me why Trump had to endorse him, but I don't. If Trump's the kingmaker, then why would he make Oz a king? Well, why are people, if you have the power and if you have the demographics on your side, why are you making these terrible decisions? Like, I never understand why places like Utah and places like South Carolina send people like Mitt Romney and Lindsey Graham to the Senate. You can send Patrick Henry to the Senate if you wanted to. You have the power to do. What the hell is with you people? Come on now. But what do you think about another thing I was wondering about? You said Republicans have to do a better job of chasing those votes. How do you feel about this now? This outlook on elections going forward, where you just got to go and trick or treat, ballot harvest. You have to go trick or treating better than the other guys. I feel like this is just a food fight that smacks of, oh God, I don't know. It just feels less and less legitimate as we go on. If this is the way that we have to compete as a country to make sure that everybody has their trick-or-treaters out there doing, grabbing ballots from people who otherwise in another generation would just go out and vote for 15 minutes once every 4 years. What the hell is this? I mean, that it feels like it's just, again, circling the drain.
Well, somebody had just sent before, somebody from RCP had just sent me before, NBC News. Republicans are spending millions on turnout operations that are deeply flawed, insiders say. And I hate to say this, but they always ask the wrong people how to do this stuff. And they do have to compete in this arena, but they have problems that they need to work out before they can even begin to do that, Frank. And they refuse to do it because it's all about, Don Smith and I always make a joke. We say, I know a guy, because it doesn't really matter if that person knows what they're talking about or if they're the right vendor or consultant to go to. It's just a matter of who they know. And they are going to waste this kind of money, apparently, on stuff that is, they're putting the cart before the horse, because they haven't laid the groundwork, even though they think they did with their $1 billion permanent data operation. That's garbage. So if you're going to build anything and using that as a foundation, it's not going to work. But then there's this other side that is saying, well, that's all old kind of news stuff, and you can't ballot harvest. I read one in the American Thinker, Spectator the other day, and there's very clearly, because I saw, speaking of Emerald, I saw her do a report with somebody on it, that there's going to be this other side that's saying, we can't win by ballot harvesting. Is this, we need this like real-time tech data. Frank, to me, I get the point. And I was going to read it to the audience, this article, because I wanted them to understand. They're saying that it's pointless to ballot harvest. You need real-time surveillance technology, basically, like Democrats have, which they do. They have real-time data coming in for get out the vote. In Wisconsin, by the way, election officials shared that with them and did not share it with Republicans, which is crazy to me. It's a Fourth Amendment violation, not 14th, excuse me. I don't know how you could do that. Every vote has to be treated the same. It's Bush v. Gore. It's simple, basic stuff. But his point is, we should have catch them in the act. We got to catch them. Frank, who the hell are you going to go to? My point is, who are you going to call? So great. You found them in his one example, Arizona. There was this X number of votes that were from voters who were inactive. They were suddenly activated from, and then after the election, we saw it happening real time. And then after the election, they were listed back on the inactive status. So what? My answer to that is, so what? Are you going to pick up the phone and call Director Wray? Are you going to call the Secretary of State? It's Adrian Fontes now. Even if it was a Republican, Brad Raffensperger, is he going to take your call in Georgia? This is a load of crap. Who are you going to call? So the only thing that you could do, it just has to be done right, is that if you were out there trick-or-treating, Frank, let's say, right, then you're taking candy out of the other kid's hand. Because if you don't do it, they're going to do it. You know what I'm saying? So if somebody decides, like, let's say you, Frank, you decide I'm not voting this cycle, they're going to see, because they do have that real-time surveillance, they're going to see that you did not hand back in your absentee ballot. And guess what? They're going to go get your absentee ballot. So,
wait, hold on. What about this, though? What about, okay, so in a place where the ballot harvesting has been doing well, for one side, the other side says, okay, you know what, we're going to go out there and get out the vote as well, knock on some doors and make sure that people who are registered with our party are going to get in. I mean, hey, we're here. Do you want to, we can take your vote for you, whatever. And all of a sudden, the party that doesn't usually win ekes out a victory. And then all of a sudden, a little bit after that, maybe about a couple of hours later, a dump truck full of votes shows up, says, oh, no. At what point are we when are we able to start injecting the dump trucks? My question is,
yeah. Oh, I get it.
Do we get to call their bet and raise them with a dump truck of our own? When do we get to do the dump truck stuff?
I'll tell you what, on the Republican side, they just don't seem willing to do anything that we have seen or heard, alleged Democrats do, except for one case there was in North Carolina where there was a absentee ballot scheme. And the funny thing is about that, Democrats get new elections when something like that is alleged. And they got an entirely new election in North Carolina. Now, legal experts always point out that's because they had a smoking gun, and nothing would ever qualify as a smoking gun if it was against Democrats. So you just have to, it's a double standard. Now, I understand what you're saying, though, that it will have the potential to escalate. I'm saying this: you just got to make sure that the amount they're able to put in that dump truck is a lot less than what it would have been, because you were out there making sure the pool of eligible dump truck votes is smaller. And then hope, Frank, that's enough. And I know it is by no means a fail-safe way, but for instance, in Michigan, that what we saw, and I know I'm trying to be careful here, they had the ability to see who, even up until the last minute, who did or did not return those votes. And if you're, for instance, and we're not going to be able to do this until people get in power who are willing to do it. But this goes hand in hand with what you were saying with New York the other day. There are so many records that just have issues that they're just going to be low-hanging fruit for a long time until someone can get in there and do something about it. That's just our reality. It sucks. It's not like, I wish I had better news, but that's just the truth. Like, I'm still waiting on Jocelyn Benson to give us absentee ballot affidavits that were for people who had a change of address. So if you have your record says you live at 123 Green Street, right? And then you say you moved and you went to 123 Main. In the state of Michigan, you have to sign an affidavit saying, listen, it is me, I am Frank, and I'm it's basically under penalty of perjury. It's treated the same way. I'm saying I moved from 123 Main, whatever, to this new, and I need it sent to this new address. Well, there were a ton of them that we just saw. They went to different addresses. So that's fine and could be perfectly okay. But I just want the affidavits to show me that those people literally or legitimately signed those. Yeah, because I'm going to call them and I'm going to chase them down. And they won't give them to you. So this is part of the reality we have right now, and it sucks. The other part is there are a lot of potential votes because Republicans don't have a ballot chasing operation. There are a lot of what we call normies, and they're like reluctantly Republican if you were to get them into the polls, but they just don't vote. There's a lot of these people out here in Minnesota, tons of them. In Michigan, the one I just stated, there's like 700,000 that we identified that if you got them to a poll, they probably would vote Republican. But they're not willing to put that money in. So again, if you're building all of this, and it's the article on NBC, a lot of those foundings are true, because if you're building your foundation on something that's already existing, clearly very flawed, the data, the latency issues are everything they're complaining about. These real-time guys are complaining about with database latency. That's all true. That's why I'm saying, again, and people can take this how they want, you don't have time to bitch and moan over a primary that's basically already over. You need to clean this database latency issue up first before you even try to spend all of those millions upon millions, building yourself a get out the vote, or what is now really not get out the vote. It's a gathering of the vote. You can still call it GOTV, but it's not a get out, Frank. It's a gathering. You got to go get it. And Democrats,
it's like raking leaves.
Yeah, it's right. And I gotta tell you, man, Democrats are real creative. And I use this example all the time because there's so many of them, but it's not done through the RNC like the Republicans are like arguing needs to be done, or at least some. It was done through third parties. And that's probably to protect some people from anything that they may find that may not have been completely on the up and up. But they were really smart about this. They were basically hiring people that are normies. Go put extra little, we got this inflation issue is killing everybody. If you want an extra $500, this is your area of responsibility. This is your neighborhood. You live in this apartment complex. You live in this neighborhood with various apartment complexes. Here is your real-time live database where you could go through it and you can go and take this area of responsibility, do what we're asking you to do. And if you hit this number, you'll get this amount of money at the end of the week. It was brilliant, man. Brilliant. And this one woman, forget, because they were training people through Zoom. This one woman, she just was trying to put extra food on the table, or put some food on the table. And she was like, if I ran out of Democratic registrations in my area, will I get paid if I get Republican ones too? Like, she just did, because she wasn't there to win an election. She was there to make money. And they were like, no Republicans, no. So they were really smart about it. And it was definitely not done through Republicans and volunteers and whatever, even paid staff. That's not how it was done. They recruited normies who are smart, close to the communities, like as close as you could get. This way, when so-and-so knocks on your door to remind you about voting, then you're not off put by it. It was brilliant. And that's just one scheme. And then, oh, by the way, Apple just so happens to send those people, because I guess it could be a coincidence, but Apple, if you have an iPhone, just so happens to send you a notification about reminding you how easy it is to vote by mail. And here's a link if you need to for resources. And then maybe you'll get a push from Apple News an hour later telling you about election denier candidates, just to make sure you vote the way they want you to vote. I mean, Frank, it's so complicated. Republicans don't have an effing clue yet, man. They don't.
I wish they would get creative about, writing good screenplays again, stuff like that. All the creativity goes toward swiping elections so that they'll have the majorities to take from people and tell them how to live is incredible. And not to say that there's much more to be admired with mainstream Republican politics too. They're both socialists. I can't stand them, but it's, you talk about they're getting really creative. You're like, creativity in itself has really positive connotations. You hear that that word creative. That person's very creative. Oh, well, that's a
Oh, it's a
positive
good
thing.
thing.
Not anymore.
You know, Frank, somebody had asked a question or really just make a statement, which was for you. And they said, and they're right about this, you know, that think that red states, for instance, think they have pristine rolls and they don't. They're right. And this is Ellie Bell 1. And that, you know, they think they don't pull any election fortification, which is our word here. That's what we use. And he said they do. And that's why they can't ever get rid of these rhinos. I'll tell you a story, actually. Utah.
Arizona was
That's Republicans. They did that. They put that system into place. Absolutely.
The McCain camp. They killed candidacy in Arizona that sniffed of independent American traditionalist constitutional thinking. It had to be McCain brand Republicanism, or your entire candidacy was torpedoed out there. So I know it's not just, I live in a red state, so we have good. I know I've heard, you know, just knowing Tracy and what she was doing in South Carolina, what that's like with the GOP.
Oh yeah.
So I know it's, you know, red state, blue state is not as you know, night and day as we think. I know that.
And in Utah, now this is the second election cycle. I mean, we've polled it a million times. They've had vote by mail for a long time, but there is a huge movement to go back to precinct level paper balloting. And the biggest obstruction, and by the way, when we're talking about Eric and pilot programs to vote online, I kid you not, folks, even some locals did pilot programs for ranked choice voting. That's all rhinos, and they refuse to listen to anything the grassroots wants. It's so bad. I had a rhino get up because during the legislative session, they were obviously being pushed. They got enough signatures to get this, you know, considered. They get up to present, you know, the polling data and propose that they go through a couple of, you know, votes on various things. I had this Republican get up during the legislative session, which I'm not even there. They're just citing some data. Smears the hell out of me during a legislative session on the floor of their chamber. I mean, this is supposed to be a Republican who cares about election integrity, and he gets up citing Nate Silver. It's unbelievable. The truth is, the rhinos are the ones in Utah pushing all those programs. Why? Because they're realizing, like Lisa Murkowski realized in Alaska, I can't survive a primary one-on-one. If an America First candidate runs against me, I'm doomed. So they want ranked choice voting. They want this, they want that. They want internet voting so they can play around with all this. And there's even a law in Utah, which is they try to make it about privacy, Frank. Only so much of the voter file can even be public. So it's supposed to be to protect people's information. That's a load of crap. It's so you can't tell whether or not these are valid records or up-to-date records. I really believe that. And this talk about Eric is ludicrous. It can take me 2 seconds to run a database check to tell you whether somebody left the state. To pretend like Eric is their only way that states can communicate is nuts. And by the way, they spend millions each year to do it. I could do it in like 10 minutes and I'll charge you a lot less. It's just it's nuts. It doesn't make any sense other than that they want to be the ones who control it. And that really goes, you know, that really gets to it. What about something like what Garrett says? Would you be like game for like small towns to mid cities using their bus services to go to nursing homes and bus people to drive them to the polls even if on election day? Garrett saying, like, even if it was election day,
to bus them. I mean, hey, I mean, if they're physically able and they want to ride, I think that if you live in a nursing home or something like that, nursing homes should take civic considerations like that into account of their scheduling, as you know. Anyway, I mean, if there are people that are there that are, you know, really advanced age, they have a lot of physical. Then I think nursing homes, they should really be good about absentee balloting and things like that. But other than that, there's a lot of people who are physically capable, but they're just, you know, there's nobody to care for them and they're in assisted living. That doesn't mean that there shouldn't be shuttle services made available for people who can still walk and know where their polling station is and go. Absolutely. I mean, that's just like somebody getting on on public transit to go vote. It's just personal responsibility, and there's plenty of people who live in assisted living facilities that are capable of taking responsibility on issues like that. Some may need some absentee ballots, but that's with actual absentee ballots, identification is verified through that. This J.C. Penney at home mailer, these it's
true.
These penny saver mailer ballots it's ridiculous. I remember when they were first getting sent home in the summer of 2020. We had people, somewhere in the Carolinas or Georgia, they actually had ballots show up for their pets under their pets' names. They didn't know that these were non-humans, but ballots showed up. It made news stories because whoever got it to their house obviously alerted authorities about it, and they didn't do what other people might have done and said, okay, Jax the cat is going to vote for Biden. That's just I think for people in assisted living, if they can actually get out and walk and they they don't need any kind of they're not like really dementia riddled or anything like that, there should definitely be shuttle services. And for anybody else who really just can't get around that easy, absentee ballots. It's not that hard, but they make it hard. They make it seem like this is that we are not only that it's not only a complex thing that we have to think about, where we have to change everything, but the impetus for it is so ridiculous. Obviously, it was COVID in 2020, but now it's just like so it was an extenuating circumstance in 2020. Now, if you want to bring that pandemic era extenuating circumstance rolled back a little bit, now you're limiting ballot access to people, which now is just a general ballot access thing, which is so stupid. But they are con artists. They're all con artists.
Yeah, they are.
Yep. We're talking about the Queen Spider really living inside the DNC and then beyond the whole party thing into the more of the corporatist global arena there. But both parties, they as we were talking about when the other night when you were on, both parties want to reestablish that proper orbit where they can play this WWE match with each other. One's the heel, one's the hero, and they direct trillions of dollars of contracts to people, all their friends. They're ingratiating themselves. They're washing money through war zones. All this. They want to reestablish the orbit that made all of their families rich for the last 100 some odd years. And so we can come down on corporate Democrat types, but that's really just we're talking WWE here.
Yeah, and I mean, to some extent, that's even more real. I mean, but the point is, it was all production. The fight's all production. It's not real. And by the way, no one's ever really winning, right? It's not like it's not a real victory, even if it's a declared victory, it's not a real one. And the difference is, though, Frank, the audience wants to be entertained in WWE. The American people aren't being the wool isn't being pulled over their eyes when they're sitting in the audience watching a show. They know they're watching a show. This is different. They don't, or at least for many years, people didn't know they were just watching a show, until, Trump came along and ripped everybody's mask off. And you're like, oh my God. And I mean, really, that's one of the reasons why they hate this guy so much. And you said something before. I'm all for increased participation in voting, but some of this really is about philosophy. I don't subscribe or agree to the philosophy that everybody should vote. I just don't. And I like the idea of an election day. I like the idea of people going, like you said, it was personal responsibility, making sure that that's done. If you need your hand held to be able to vote, and I'm not sure I want you to vote. Neither would of our founders. I mean, there was a reason why they made sure people had skin in the game before they could have a say in it. And I wish I celebrate it when there is high participation among a lot of people who have skin in the game. There's towns all over the country covering these elections that really pride themselves in having massive turnout in places like Minnesota and New Hampshire, because they do pride themselves in being very politically active, but they're also very informed. And I don't think I want that universally spread throughout the country, just so everyone can say, oh, look at how noble we are. So many people voted.
Yeah.
I'll be the first one to admit it. And politicians, maybe they're too afraid to say that out loud. But I don't want such convenience that anyone can vote and it really doesn't matter, because then it becomes an afterthought, right? It's not something you really put a whole lot of, depth and time and thought into. You're just doing it because it's easy and you're kind of being reminded, oh, yeah, that's right. Back when I remember when I first turned 18, Frank, it was such a big deal. I get to vote. It's my civic duty to do my due diligence. I prefer that mentality than the mentality of making it convenient, man. I do.
Yeah,
Not even close.
convenience is something that should be sought after when it comes to something like this. Skin in the game. I'm not talking about racial barriers or anything like that.
Yeah, different. Yeah.
Needs to be. I wish there was a way to give people civic tests, but then again, even with civic tests, they would learn the right answers. Learn the right answer. I mean, for example, here's a civic test for you. Whenever an idiot is elected to Congress, they hold their right hand on some holy book, and they swear an oath to the Constitution that they, from there on, pay absolutely no attention to at all. So to put 10 questions in front of somebody and say, what's the role of the House? How is a bill passed? Or, this and that. And after a while, everybody will just learn what boxes to check, and then they'll go and vote for the mongrel that they. So it's really just about how are you voting to take, or are you voting to preserve? And people at this point, I think it was Alexander Titler who said this years and years ago. He said that, democracy, why there's such a short shelf life on democracy. And that's when the public realizes that they can vote largesse and they can go and just pay themselves out of the treasury. Then you're a few very short generations away from absolute despotism, and then it's all done. And that's what we're doing right now. People are voting to take. And it's nobody, the people who would be voting to preserve are those who have something that they feel that they stand to lose, something that they have earned, and they have earned the right to earn. So like you said before, it's a philosophical situation, voting. Civics, American civics especially, is rooted in the Constitution that is a philosophical document. It's all really about how can you preserve the ability for an individual to nurture their ambition, to go and build a generational wealth for people who have not been born yet, and to make sure that along the way, government is able to do a very short, useful amount of things for you on an international trade basis, on national security, but otherwise everything is relegated to local decision making. Because that's just the way it is. It's all a philosophical question, but we're so far away from anybody being able to even have that conversation. It's that's why at this point I'm just like, hey, I know holding the opinion that not everybody should vote is a controversial one, but it's not like I'm going to have a chance to see my world come to fruition. I mean, this thing just needs to collapse altogether before we get to see what a stateless society would look like, what starting from scratch would look like, and all that stuff. There's no way that we would actually be able to vote into that direction unless, of course, people really start seeing the way to trump all of the 51% over 49% tyranny that goes on is to double your efforts where you are, where you live, thinking about who your sheriff is, and creating a nice air bubble wherever you are, where you can breathe freely and you can tell everybody else to get bent. And that's just really that's I mean, I love how there's still these things that could be taken advantage of, though by and large the country is really becoming a claustrophobic place.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to before, you want to change the world, first change your own little corner of the world, your sheriff, your school board, whatever it may be, taking on this monumental task all the time. We do this Every election, we got to say, whether you're on what side you're on, you got to save the country. It's always the most important election, and it's a national focus. Every election should be the most important election. It shouldn't be brinksmanship. And, again, there's just always been so much focus on national. And I think some of that has changed over time, especially with 2020. I think a lot of people realized, that, I may live in especially people on the right, I may live in a Trump plus 30 county, but everyone who counts the votes is a Democrat. I may live in a Trump plus 30 county, but every superintendent of schools or something is a rabid liberal, a nutcase in my mind. So maybe there's been some awakening to that, but maybe there needs to be a constant stress on the fact that you cannot change the world unless you change your own corner of it. And if everyone started there, then it would be an easier job, wouldn't it? It'd be a lot easier job, Frank.
Well said, Rich. Well said.
Well, listen, my friend, tell everybody the schedule. I'll let you run. Tell everybody the schedule, when to check you out, what you got going on. And it was awesome having you, my friend. Come back and do this again.
Thank you. Anytime you want me, I love hanging out with you. And you got a great crew over there, especially that Laura character.
She's something else, isn't she?
She is. She runs a tight ship. I'm live Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern time until 9 p.m. You can find everything that has to do with my show on quitefrankly.tv. But for the time being, I'm on YouTube for 7 o'clock, Rumble. I would love to be on Getter one day, but I've got, D Live and Twitch and on Foxhole. And I mean, there's so many places, but you just don't know when you're going to get taken off one place or another. So always remember,
Yeah.
7 p.m. weeknights, and the last Monday of every month, we got Rich Barris coming by to take the vital.
Well, listen, man. Oh, did I lose him? To take the vital. He froze.
Of course.
Just as he was saying it. Well, listen, if he comes back, we'll let him wrap that up and finish that up. But I'll tell everybody, 7 to 9 Eastern Standard Time. He's everywhere. If you go to quitefrankly.tv, which is awesome, and eventually I got to do that with us, because we have it. We've had it for a while. I just haven't gone. There's just so much going on. Yeah. I haven't been able to do it, but we do have peoplespundit.tv. We got peoplespunditdaily.tv. It just hasn't gotten up there yet. But yeah, Frank's got something a lot like what you'll see if you go to Timcast and all the different places you want to watch it, whether it's on YouTube, Rumble. You got to get him on Getter, Laura. Got to get him on Getter. It is tough. The one thing I wish Getter would do is the ability to schedule it. That's why, for people who don't know, that's why we're always showing 2 minutes of nothing at the beginning of every show, because waiting for Getter to go on and then give people time to get into Getter. If there's probably is a better way to do it. We'll just have to figure it out. But yeah, it's still cool. The audience there is pound for pound, pretty big. Even though Rumble's definitely holding their own. It used to be solely YouTube. Then we had so many moved from YouTube to Rumble, and then Twitter we still go out to as well. But it's just Getter has much bigger audience. Probably not a coincidence. All right, so we can go back to talking about some of this. I want to talk. There's a story, and I will get.
We also have
some
questions.
Yep, and I see it. Frank is a great guy. I'll tell you, Dan. We always mess with him with the Yankees hat. Because she's Bronx, which you would think is Yankees, but there is quite a split there. Her family was Mets, so was mine. So you're from Staten Island, Brooklyn could be either one. They used to have the Dodgers, as you know, and my generation was so much older, Tommy Lasorda, but they remember the Brooklyn Dodgers. Sandy Koufax was one of my favorite pitchers. But Queens, parts of Staten Island, that's all Mets. So, and it's, I would say if I was being fair, Laura, I'd say in New York, there are probably more Yankee fans than Met fans.
That's only because they got stripes.
That's only because they got the stripes. Right. But let's see real quick before I move on here. Yeah, absolutely. How does the amount of federal government employees that live in Virginia affect how the state votes in Senate presidential elections compared to gubernatorial elections? Yeah. That's a great question. So gubernatorial elections, Republicans have won a couple in the last, let's say, 10 plus years since the state has gotten, or 15, since the state has gotten bluer and bluer. And Democrats, once upon a time, used to be able to win that state, even though it was a red state nation at the presidential level. There's no doubt about it. No doubt. You could see a county like Loudoun County for something like that. Or you tell them. Yeah, you tell them. Oh, that's Frank telling me. All right, yeah, it happens. No need for that. No need. Thank you for coming on, my friend, and you come back anytime. And he's a great guest. Always a great conversation with Frank. But yeah, there's considerations when you're voting for at any that's true of any governor election, that those are local elections. It's different. It's just different. So it's much easier to win it at the gubernatorial level than it is at the presidency. Again, I've said this before, but Bob McDonnell was 100% not going to beat Barack Obama if he was the Republican nominee for president in 2012, just because he beat his Democratic opponent in 2009 by a huge margin, even carried Fairfax County. It's very, very similar to what we saw in DeSantis versus Charlie Crist in 2022, carrying areas where no Republicans carry. Yeah, well, rest assured, Joe Biden would win those areas if he ran for president against him. And then I can see it right now. He's struggling to do as well as Trump in Miami-Dade. So that's just the nature of the beast. These are most definitely local elections. Either way, though, the fact that you are a state, an employee of the state, certainly makes you much more likely than not to vote Democrat. So the bigger the government bureaucracy is, the bigger the government workforce is, the harder it will be for Republicans to win in areas like that. And that's true of a lot of urban areas, obviously, in general. Now, add to that another layer of demographics, which is, of course, the public sector unions or something like that. It adds to the challenge. I'm going to kill this fly. Open the door. Open the door so he goes out. Let's see. I didn't, but I'll ask Frank next time. The 1776 anniversary celebration that Trump has planned. I have heard about the snowman. I don't know as much about it as maybe others do because I've been just so busy polling and stuff, but I have heard about this, and that's interesting. I should have gotten that question before with Frank. This thing is flying around. 1 second. I'm going to get him real quick. Hold on. So fat. Normally, I was so. Do you remember when I was like 13 and I caught a fly with chopsticks? It was awesome. Do you remember? It was a total accident. I'm not going to lie. It was like Friday pizza night, and we were just hanging out. It was when we used to hang out. And
these chopsticks, guys, forever
bad.
Keep this down. My word.
Bad. And anyway, for some reason, we didn't get Red Moon. We got Chinese. And I was just joking. And I was like, oh, awesome. And I got him. And I was like, all right, you got to lower that a little bit, though. It is feeding back. I want to show you this article. 2 articles. Whether or not DeSantis is at a bump or not. All right? Because I just don't see any bump. And neither does anybody else. There's a couple of universes. We've discussed this before. There is the bullish on DeSantis universe and the bullish on Trump universe. Okay. And for a while, I can't believe, I'm sorry. My son just texted me asking me for money. Like, can I just drop everything I'm doing and go to school and give him money? Like, he's out of his mind. Can you handle that, please? These kids are crazy. I'm working. I'm on a show. Yeah. So anyway, and it makes my, we were somewhere in the middle of that spectrum. I would even say months ago, you could have put us on the Trump bearish spectrum, even though we never had DeSantis leading nationally. It got close there for a second. It was like, 43-31. That's pretty close. And we just were ahead of the curve of what is now in the Trump bullish universe. But I actually think it was fair to say we were in the middle for a while there. YouGov, I've explained this before, is a singular data set. And whether it's bought by NBC News, The Economist, or Yahoo News, they will take that data set and each will interpret what they will out of that data set. So Yahoo is one of the more liberal, even though they're all liberal. They're all Democratic leaning. They're all highly educated. It is not a voter file sourced panel. This is adults. All right. So this doesn't shock me, but the YouGov Yahoo one is more bullish than YouGov when they're alone and they release their own polling. Here we are. So let's pop up here DeSantis in the new Yahoo News poll. I'm just going to read it. Poll, no bump for DeSantis from 2024 launch as Trump continues to climb. It's from Andrew Romano, Yahoo News. Ron DeSantis was surely hoping for a bump from his presidential campaign launch, this week. But a new Yahoo News YouGov poll shows no sign of improvement. In fact, the survey of 1,520 U.S. adults, which was conducted from May 25th to May 30th, suggests that the Florida governor may have actually lost ground against frontrunner and former President Donald Trump since officially entering the race for the 2024 nomination during a glitchy Twitter Spaces event with the platform's billionaire owner, Elon Musk. Among potential Republican primary voters, registered voters, and they're just saying they're registered. The truth is, YouGov has no way of knowing that. Registered voters who identify as Republicans or GOP-leaning independents. Trump now leads the full field of 7 declared candidates with 53%. That's up from 48% in early May before DeSantis threw his hat in the ring. And DeSantis now lags further behind than he did just a few weeks ago. His 25% is down from 28% in early May. That is, of course, one of the higher polling supports that DeSantis has. In other polls, he's nowhere near that. Put another way, DeSantis trailed Trump by 20 points in the previous Yahoo News YouGov poll. Today, he trails by 28 points. None of the remaining candidates, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, South Carolina Tim Scott, tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, or Radio House Larry Elder, clear the 5% threshold. Again, it's important to understand that soon we're going to have to get into delegate math. And the truth is, Ron DeSantis is getting to a point where he may not even qualify for delegates in some of these states. Other candidates at this point are not in delegate qualifying territory. So if DeSantis loses the first 1 or 2 states, gets a handful of delegates, and then really collapses, and Trump takes the majority of that support, it is entirely possible that this thing is over much faster than anybody thinks. Plus, we're not talking about the impact of some of these very big blue states where Donald Trump is in monstrous leads. New Jersey, New York, Massachusetts, Illinois. This is going to rack up delegates. And nobody else is going to have an appeal in these states. This is something that bit them going into 2015 and 16, and they never saw it coming, these never-Trumpers and anti-Trump people. Trump appealed to the moderates in blue states, and he took the lion's share of conservatives. He lost very conservatives to Ted Cruz in some of those states. But for the fact he pulled together this coalition, and he earned and took the lion's share of the delegates in those big states. It's even worse this time. You want the God's honest truth? It's even worse this time. His polling lead is bigger than it ever was against any of those other people. And it's not much of a race at this point. Florida's winner take all, so it doesn't matter if DeSantis winds up getting 5 points behind Donald Trump. He's still at 50. And you cannot beat someone who's at 50, a majority of of support. You can't. Sorry, but you can't. Regardless, DeSantis' stock has not risen and may have even fallen during his first days as a presidential candidate. The swing toward Trump and away from DeSantis technically teeters right on the edge of this margin of error of 4.5%. Give me a break. They're really stretching. It's worth noting that while the margin of error for the full survey is 2.7, subsets like potential Republican primary voters always have a larger margin. Folks, He's above 50%. The margin is not 25 points, is it? Is the sampling error plus or minus 25? To strain yourself to explain this, the Yahoo News YouGov poll hints at why. One reason may be the unconventional nature of DeSantis' rollout. The governor's problem is not that the potential Republican primary voters have turned against him in droves because their audio cut out on Twitter Spaces or because he used too much right-wing internet jargon in his initial campaign appearances. Actually, he didn't use enough, but overall, just 13% of them say that DeSantis' launch left a negative impression with them. Nobody said it was a negative, that they had a negative impression. He did not speak to what they needed him to speak to. He did not quell their fears that he is a neocon, that he is disloyal, that he is not ready for prime time. It's possible that by foregoing the usual announcement theatrics, the cheering crowd, dramatic backdrop, wall-to-wall cable news coverage, DeSantis missed an opportunity to improve his flagging image. Just a third, 32% of potential Republican primary voters, for instance, characterized their impression of DeSantis' launch as positive, while nearly twice as many say neutral. His favorability is also, this is something DeSantis' camp has continued to lie about. And this is another poll that shows that it was a faulty strategy because it was built on flawed assumptions. DeSantis' favorable image rating among potential primary voters is lower than Trump's. Trump's relentless attacks against DeSantis may have taken a toll. No, they have taken a toll. And I can tell you in the Florida poll, there are twice as many voters who say they will not vote if DeSantis is the nominee versus Trump. That to me is astonishing considering this is the governor's own state. So Republicans are in fact getting very, what's the word, Laura? They're disliking him now. It's not a matter of disloyalty pisses people off. I'm a little bit surprised that it's like some kind of revelation to some of his team and his so-called influencers that being disloyal to someone you owe everything to is an unpopular thing. Betrayal is as unpopular as a venereal disease, to use their saying all the time. They always use the same thing. And then the 10 bots that are clearly bots because they literally type the message the exact same way, somehow always echo something that the influencer is saying in your replies. It's a bot farm. Hiring bot farms to attack people who point out valid criticisms, betraying the guy you owe everything to, is not popular. Why on earth would you think it was? And I'll tell you why. Because of their polling. Their pollster told them that even not only America, but a huge chunk of Republican voters don't like Donald Trump and will never vote for him. Trump is more popular now. And he left. Hold on. Let me close it. Just flew out. In the morning consult poll, for instance, Trump is more popular now than he was at the end of his presidency with Republicans and with everybody. When the Harvard-Harris poll, he's more popular than he's ever been. He's only -1. -1. Emerson, same damn thing. They have never found Trump this favorable. Rasmussen actually has him positive slightly. We're not there, but we have him more positive than we did. It was built on flawed assumptions. They put themselves in a bubble. They hired bubble consultants. And now they're wondering how the hell this could have happened. You're trailing in your own state by 17 points. The man is above 50. You're lucky I didn't do a two-way. Which I should have. Budget. People want to know why? The answer is budget. We were not supposed to do this Florida poll. But I wanted to know Florida is a gauge for me. I know where every vote is in the state. I know where every single vote is. And I wanted to know there's no lying. If he can't win Florida, he's not winning anywhere else. Because by the time he gets to Florida anyway, he would have already lost most, if not every single one of those states. Probably every single one of them. That's the truth. So by the time we get to Florida, he's not going to have any momentum. And he's going to lose that state if this keeps up. Florida will move. It will react to what is going on the ground.
I think he also destroyed his career.
It's over, Laura. His career is over as of right now. He has wrecked his future. Wrecked it.
There are a few people that could take that governorship from him too.
Well, because he's going to lose his clout.
Mm-hmm. Like Sabatini, wouldn't that be retribution?
He's going to lose his political clout with the legislature, and he is and NL is. I'm putting this up. He is banking that the prosecutions are going to hurt Donald Trump. I just don't know it. I don't believe it.
That's so cowardice, though. Like
I just don't believe it's going to work.
And you're willing to like take that win. He's not going to win anyway, so he loses no matter what.
Laura, let's say that I'm wrong and the indictments do politically damage Trump, and then DeSantis beats him because of that. So the DeSantis strategy works. Do you have any idea how many Republican voters are going to either vote third party or not vote at all? Because a man who is their nominee relied on the deep state to not only persecute but prosecute him. Barnes was right all along when it comes to this. He was right all along. That's how this was going to play out.
This is insane, Richard. Like, there's no way that he's going to win. And whoever keeps telling him this really needs to take a walk.
Babe, listen to the audio. Listen to the leaked audio from the.
I remember this.
From the announcement. If they really believe that, then I know some of them do, and I know when you're the candidate, you want to believe it because they're telling you this stuff to blow up your ego, and it makes you feel better of yourself. Look, the presidency is the most powerful job in the world, and one can say, especially if you're a politician and you're ambitious, that it's the ultimate achievement in the world, right? Like, I've become the most powerful man on the planet. So, you think about that, folks. Just think about that. But you could not have believed, unless you were really deluding yourself, you could not have believed. How could Megyn Kelly know this, but you not? You could not believe that you could run in the MAGA lane and take his voters away from him. You cannot have believed that. You can't. Anyway, let's keep finishing this up because there is one more I want to add to this, because the issue now it's not just me. I said it, and now other polls are starting to show it. This isn't just about, okay, governor, we love you as governor, but we don't want you to be president. This is Trump's thing. You should stay that, you're a young guy and you should wait your turn kind of thing. There was that 2 months ago, a month ago. Now I'm not sure I like you very much. The stuff we're hearing during polling is totally different now. Another reason, I want to keep going. Another reason DeSantis may be struggling right out the gate is that the more voters learn about his agenda, the less plausible his main argument against the former president, that he would be more electable, starts to look. Well, no kidding. They never believed that he was more electable than Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the only presidential Republican candidate to not only win, but win an electoral college comfortable victory in their lifetime. In their lifetime. You're not going to tell the one guy who did that he's not electable. And then even though he lost because of COVID, because of what Frank and I were talking about. Most Republican voters don't believe he lost legitimately, like you see their influencers claim all that. Like, they're making him look worse. And DeSantis himself talking to the New York Times about it. He is saying, oh, it wasn't that. It wasn't fortification. He lost because people don't like him. You just lost 80% of the party. The Yahoo Gov poll tested this dynamic a number of ways. Ask if the rest of America would be better off if it were governed more or less like Florida. Just 29% of Americans say more. Indeed, Yahoo and Gov asked the 8 proposals DeSantis recently signed into law in Tallahassee, key planks in the Florida blueprint. Those 6 proposals are more unpopular than not. The abortion ban. This is where, for those of you who remember, I put it on after talking about it, Dick Morris's video after he conducted the poll in Iowa. This is what Dick Morris is trying to say. Their plan is to try to outflank Trump on abortion because in Iowa, the abortion issue has dominated the Iowa caucuses for at least the last 4 decades. The bottom line is there's like 70+% of Iowa caucus goers who say, even though Trump is a little bit too liberal on the issue of abortion for me, I am still voting for Donald Trump because he's my guy. The rest of them don't agree that he's out of the main step with them. He ended Roe v. Wade. 15 weeks nationally is a much more politically savvy position. You cannot win the Rust Belt by advocating in Iowa that abortion should be banned before the 6-week mark or at the 6-week mark. Most people don't know they're pregnant at 6 weeks, folks. They just start to realize I'm late on my period. I'm late. Or maybe I feel a little nauseous. Practically speaking, you cannot win a general election like that. Can we get real? Most Americans, we've done this. We've dug into this. Support restrictions on abortion. This is too early. The book stuff, I think, is stupid. They didn't word it correctly. If they would have worded it the way that it's true to be worded, DeSantis's policies would have been more popular. All right, that's just a fact. So on and on and on. What really is going on is that when asked directly who has the best chance to be elected, 55% said Trump, 31% said DeSantis. And that's really where it is. The definitely not voting for DeSantis number among independents has skyrocketed. The definitely would has dropped. That's a problem. His entire narrative has been, I am more electable. That was never the case, but it's something his pollster, the firm, by the way, the firm that is the founding they are the founding fathers of the Unskew the Polls movement in 2012. They are the reason Mitt Romney was crying damn near when he lost on election night, because he believed these people when they sold him a line of bullshit. Now DeSantis believed them as well. And now here we are. There's another element to this I want to point out, and that is a lack of authenticity, which we're hearing a ton of. All right. I'm actually going to go a little bit over here, Laura, so I can do this. All right. I got to basically every question already, unless you added more. You added one. Okay. I'll get to it. But DeSantis or DeSantis, his team won't say. I kid you not. And I can't have been the only one because I'm from Florida. I can't have been the only one to notice that Ron DeSantis says his name differently depending on the different day and who he's talking to. Some presidential candidates struggle to nail their messages. Ron DeSantis is struggling to nail his name. In the early days of his campaign, DeSantis has gone back and forth between pronouncing his name DeSantis and DeSantis. Why it matters. DeSantis' dissonance on how to say his name, for years an issue of confusion for his campaign teams, is a curiosity of many GOP leaders and donors wonder whether the Florida governor is ready for a scrutiny of presidential campaign. And I got to tell you guys, maybe he had some adversarial media, but he's largely been dealing with a fawning environment. He is not dealing with an adversarial environment. During his first few weeks as a candidate, his first week, DeSantis pronounced his name DeSantis during the video announcement in his presidential campaign, the radio interview in South Carolina, in which he told listeners to go to rondesantis.com. But then DeSantis pronounced it DeSantis during his interviews with Fox News, Glenn Beck, Eric Erickson, and Mark Levin this past week. The governor's campaign, his wife, Casey, and the independent super PAC that supports him, they're not independent. Stop saying that. Consistently pronounced it DeSantis. Because I know one of the leaders of that super PAC. And he's not independent. He's pissed at Donald Trump for his own personal reasons. No super PAC who supports a candidate is independent. And they coordinate. So get over it. They break the law all the time. Here we go. Here, let's listen to this because I think, honestly, she puts it really well.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis just can't decide how to say his own name. Most folks say it like I just did.
Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
Former President Trump, he says it like this.
Ron DeSanctimonious.
But recently, more folks are noticing that the candidate and his campaign have used two different pronunciations themselves, DeSantis and other times, DeSantis.
At rondesantis.com. I'm Ron DeSantis.
Which one is right? Well, his campaign won't say, so we may never know.
What the fish and chips? Asked the proper way to pronounce his name, DeSantis' campaign did not answer. The super PAC never backed down, declined to say. Former President Donald Trump has chided DeSantis over the different pronunciations. Ron DeSantis is a phony who can't decide how to pronounce his name, the campaign spokesman, Stevie Chong, told Axios. If you can't get your name right, how can you lead a country? Honestly, you may think that was funny. You may think even that was like a wisecrack if you're a DeSantis supporter. But you cannot deny that they got to the heart of this. It's about authenticity and it's about simple competence. How could you not know how to say your own name? How could you not be decided on who you are if you can't be decided on how you pronounce your last name? It's literally your identity. During early in his political career, DeSantis, 44, appeared to use DeSantis more often. He always said DeSantis when he was a congressman, right, Laura? Always, I am Ron DeSantis. Ron DeSantis. Then it began a slow and still incomplete evolution to DeSantis. During the 2018 race for governor, the candidate and his wife pronounced his name differently in television ads. He said DeSantis in his first spot and then said DeSantis in another. Why does this matter? It may sound stupid because it sounds like consultants told him to change how he pronounces his name, and he did. That happens all the time. They suggest you make different changes like this. If a man comes up to you and tells you to change how your name sounds in order to get elected, and you do, what the hell does that say about you? When a reporter noted the difference, a campaign spokesman at the time said the candidate prefers DeSantis. What do you mean prefers? What's your name? The dueling pronunciations have tripped up others. When DeSantis was sworn in for his second term as governor in January, Florida Chief Justice pronounced his name DeSantis. Why? Because the Florida Chief Justice has been hearing him say DeSantis for 10 years. And then the governor repeated back DeSantis. Okay. The chair of Italian studies at Seton Hall University told Axios that it's common for Italian Americans such as DeSantis to change the pronunciation of their name from the original Italian to a more anglicized version, but that DeSantis surprised him. Because, can we all be real clear? DeSantis's last name, when it comes to Italian American heritage, it even has the same situation with my own. That was decided 80 years ago, folks, long before I ever became a 41-year-old man who publicly had to say his last name. It was changed when Donato got here from Ellis Island. It was not changed 40 years later with his children, 80 years later with his grandchildren. DeSantis would be proper Italian, but sloughing it off as DeSantis is common, he said, but DeSantis is not. It's not even, right, if that was because of his Italian heritage, his name would not be D-E. It would be D-I. Fellow Italian-American politician and former New York City Mayor de Blasio, a Democrat, told Axios that many fellow politicians adopt the "de" pronunciation or have something between "de" and "da." In a phone call from Italy where he was traveling, de Blasio said DeSantis' shifts were just a really weird thing to change at the last minute. People flip-flop and change their positions on things, but how you say your name is not one of them. It's not negotiable. I cannot believe I agree with Mayor Bill de Blasio. Because Mayor de Blasio is saying what those of us in the business already know to be true. He was told by consultants to change how his last name is pronounced. And I don't know who on earth would ever convince me to change how my last name was pronounced. Never. I'm curious to see who you think of as frontrunners for 2026 Florida governor primary, whose endorsement will carry more weight, Ron or Trump's. Well, I think it's very clear Trump's will. No, that's not even, I mean, it's a long way to go from now, but if this goes how I think it's going to go, Ron is going to be irrelevant. It's what's going to happen is actually what, apparently, from what I'm told by people who are close to him, why one of the reasons why he bought this argument to run now is because he's afraid of irrelevance. If this goes the way it looks like it's going to go, he's going to be his worst fear, totally irrelevant. I think Matt Gaetz is a solid choice for the governor of Florida. I think he could, if he wanted to, make a very strong run. It's more than just Matt. His family is Republican royalty. You may remember the Senate leader. Also, who else is a good bet? You know, one day maybe you could even see somebody like Anna Paula Luna be the governor of Florida. Certainly a senator. She's from that area where you need to be popular if you really want to make a nice state run. Matt is from a red area, so it's red is red. But Anna Paula Luna is from a more purplish area. It's closer. If she becomes popular and successful, then I'm gonna vote 4. Okay. All right. So with that in mind, I guess I gotta go. But those are good. It's a long way to go before 26, but you know, locals, keep your eye out for the Florida poll, weighted and processed and sent up there. We'll get it really soon. We'll drop the primary out first, then we'll give you the general elections. It's going to be a crazy weekend, but I'm going to balance it because that's what I do best. All right. Daughter's got kids got a whole lot of things going on this weekend, but that's what I do. And what else? Friday is Father's Day, isn't it? Is Friday Father's Day, guys? I never realized when Father's Day is. The only reason why I'd even think about it. Luna, aka the hottest person in Congress. She's a pretty woman for sure. It's not better. D is not better. Duh is better. Mongoose. And like just the consultants will tell you to change it to a duh to sound more Anglo-American. How do you know he did that for political reasons? Well, that's the way they will tell you. It's now a national race. So now running nationally, or even setting himself up to run nationally as the Florida governor, was for a second term. Duh is more nationally appealing than D, which wouldn't matter. In Florida, actually, D, being an Italian, is perfectly fine. More than fine. So that's how you know that it was without a doubt. Byron Donalds would be another great pick, Kimmy. Another great, these people have bright futures. Father's Day is 2-ish weeks. Okay. So as long as it's not Father's Day this weekend, we'll have a book club 3 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And I will put it out there when on Sunday. I'll put it out for YouTube, and I'll also put it out, of course, on Locals. What else? Share the Public Polling Project far and wide, of course, the best place to follow me. And you can subscribe on YouTube, Rumble. Would love it. Would appreciate it. You can always see me on Getter, but the main hub is always, that's right, Locals. Join us on Locals first. peoplespundit.locals.com. And while you're there, you can become a member first. You can become a supporter off the jump. If you are a member of YouTube, I put out the code for you. If you want to move over from being a YouTube member to being a supporter on Locals, I put that code out for you yesterday to give you some time off. Then you can basically move over without getting double charged. All right. So with that in mind, I'm out. And we will see you all on Monday for Inside the Numbers, but of course Sunday for the book club. All right.
Have a great, blessed weekend, guys.
Have a safe weekend too. All the best, folks. Keep an eye out for Florida.
Amen.
How much you wanna bet that I can get you back inside your head before the summer ends and spread a little love Just for a little fun, I'll make you come back to me before the rise of every sun. Baby, it's meant to be, I know you got a man, but he don't understand. You're gonna be